This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, Haslet, Texas. Good evening, Council. I call this meeting to order. September 6, 2022 at, excuse me, we have a time problem here. Even my phone has gone on the blink. 7:04 p.m. There is a quorum present. All members of the council are present in the chambers. If you would bow your heads with me, I'll offer the invocation, then we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Almighty Father, for your many blessings. You are so gracious to us. We ask for your guidance continually. We thank you for the many mercies. In Jesus' name, amen. You stand with me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, item number 3, citizen participation and comments. Do we have anybody that's online?
No, sir.
Do we have anybody there? Okay, very good. All right, let's go to item 4. Items of community interest. Friday, September 16th, 2022 is Movie in the Park. Does anybody know what movie that is that they're showing? What is it?
Encanto. It's an animated, is that the name of it? Yes, I haven't ever seen it.
Well, I might need to go see that. I haven't. Oh, okay. Very good. Tuesday, October 4th, 2022 is National Night Out at the Haslet Community Park from 6 to 8 p.m. Last year it was really great, so please come out and join us. Saturday, October 29th, 2022 is the Haslet High School 5K fun run and walk at 9 a.m. I know Council Member Morrow will have some words on that. You're always in the middle of that, aren't you?
The walking part, yes, not the running.
Well, I do the run, but I'm so fast you can't see me out there. Very good. Last is Saturday, October 29th, same day, 2022, is the Haslet Volunteer Fire Department's Haunted Hayride fundraiser from 7 to 10 p.m. That's always a great event, and they do a good job. It's a fun. Are you going to have a hayride out there? Very good. That is so fun. All right, let's go to item 5, updates on active items, projects, and event recaps. Mr. Rogers, Haslet Parkway Construction.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Stephen's got some pictures I sent over today. This just wanting to let y'all kind of get a feel to actually see how far along y'all's project is. This first picture up here, for me, it's over on the left-hand upper side. That is intermodal and Haslet Parkway intersection. You see, we've got a eastbound, a westbound lane on both Haslet Parkway and on Intermodal Parkway already done and complete. So that's the first thing. You see the steel already laid down for the lane going back to the east, ready to start on it. Next picture is actually looking towards Harmon Road from that intersection. You can see that entire section of road up there on the right-hand picture there. That is all, that lane's all done. The other steel is already laid for that entire section to be poured. And the next photograph is showing up to 35W and 170 interchange. You can see the lane each way there, plus steel already, they're not quite finished all the way up to the road, but almost ready for that section. And the last one there is actually the machine sitting there. That's just to the west of Harmon Road. They're setting up. There'll be pouring, unless something changes in the weather, starting again tomorrow night. The weather last week with the rain put them off pretty much most of last week, not getting a whole lot done. Today they were out there drying everything out. They had dozers running up and down, just stirring the ground up with the cleats just to start drying it out and reblading. But tomorrow evening is going to be back to pouring concrete all night long. Any questions? Pretty exciting. You go out there. It really looks like a road now. Can't get away from it anymore. It looks like a road.
David, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and stay for the next item. That's the
Sure.
Haslet Accelerated Construction Project. And David's already shown you that. And today, every Tuesday, 3:30, we have a project meeting with TxDOT and Zachary and engineers, anybody that touches this project. And they're all giving a great report, and TxDOT made mention that they will be pouring concrete from now on for the rest of this year.
Yes.
So they are in full steam ahead. So they're making great progress. Is there, other than that, I'm just so happy. I mean, we got a great team of people out there, TxDOT and Zachary and the engineers. They're all working together, communicating well. David and Carl Disease, who is Haslet's engineer, KHA Kimley Horn, our engineer on the project, working with the other the construction company, Zachary's engineers and TxDOT. They are all. It's going well.
Yeah,
Going
everything's
well.
going. Wish everything was perfect. Not everything can be, but for the most part, especially the L portion, is going fantastic. That part, they're technically ahead of schedule right now on that portion. So most of that whole first phase piece is slightly ahead of schedule. Phase 2, we don't like to talk about that one yet. We'll wait and see. That one hadn't got started till next month, so we'll see how that one goes.
Very good.
Hey,
Thank
Dave-
y'all.
David, are they having any problems with the abundance of concrete, actual supply of it?
No, they have their own plant over there. If you go down 170 going towards Roanoke, there's a big plant that they have over there in the middle of the right of way. That's the plant they're using and
Okay.
making their own. So yeah, they're not having any problems with that.
Right.
Small pours have had that issue because
Yeah.
those usually come from somebody outside. Those they have to schedule well out in advance. Some of the drainage structures, things like that that are small, those they're having fun scheduling those out.
Okay, thank
The other?
Mr. Mayor, the online portion has just shut down and is rebooting at this point. Do not know if we'll get back up to have the meeting recorded for online use.
The recording.
The recording, the online go-to-meeting, everything just shut down. The computer said it hit an error. It's rebooting now. I'll try to have it up momentarily, but I wanted to let you know it did just shut down.
All right. Well, with regard to the Open Meeting Act, since we don't have any council people out there, that's not an issue. We have everything, all the minimum requirements sitting in this room. With regard to the meeting minutes, we have our City Secretary Shannon Montgomery doing that. The video aspect is a matter of convenience and review. So I'm looking at you, Jeremy. Am I
correct,
am
yes.
I on?
Yes,
So
that
we
that
can
would all be
pers-
correct. We're not going to have to cancel the meeting because of technical.
Very
so
good.
We can proceed and hope that gets back on.
And I'm doing that then since we had no online viewers. If we hadn't, we did? Okay, how long do you estimate? Council, I'm prone to, since we had 10 online viewers, is to take a 5-minute recess to give them opportunity to boot up, and then we can resume. Are y'all, okay, I see your head nods. All right, let's take a 5-minute recess to let our system reboot, and it is 7:13 p.m. So that'll bring us back at 7:18.
Be recorded.
Okay. It was good. Not down here. I did yesterday. Chris was working with these, and I took her out glasses. I got done back of the head, but this was the most painful. You got to do these, or neither of them. Yeah, that like other stuff. Well, I didn't give her anything else. Yeah. We make it use of that. I know what I tell you what I learned a long time. I need the jewelry I think doesn't work. It's just woody. That's just it. You see it this morning?
That's what we do. Always
Exactly.
I wrap it up. I don't use it, so I wrap it up. I don't open it.
And it's like, you want to see what you bought me? Oh, Merry Christmas.
Yeah. You got tired of me taking things back.
You know, and one thing that I was now a long time ago was trying to get started. You can get hurt. All the stuff in the body. And she was like,
Yeah.
sorry, she was fine. Well, Chris,
Yeah.
more than oh, that's all right. We have 2 more minutes till 7:18. Then we'll resume. And our system is back up, it looks like? Okay. Why don't you can you make an announcement to the people, or shall I, those in the audience? For those folks that were online, we had a system hiccup and it rebooted. So we've a few of the online attendees have dropped off. If you should know who they are, and I'm speaking to you folks out there online, if you have their text or number or anything, let them know, if you would, that we are back up and running. And we'll be resuming this meeting in about 60 seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 7:18, and so let's go ahead and resume our meeting. Yes, the council is still in chambers, and all you online attendees, welcome back. And we left off at item number 6, just starting that. So the consent agenda. Council, do you have anything that you would like to pull from the consent agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion, please.
Mayor Hulsey,
Yes.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Motion is made to accept the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Mayor Holsey,
Yes.
I second that motion.
There is a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There's none opposed. Motion passes. Item 7, public hearing ordinances, resolutions, and action items. 7A is hold a public hearing on fiscal year 2022-2023 proposed budget. The presentation, there is not much of a, in fact, there's not a presentation of such, is that our budget is online for viewing, correct? And this is for you, the public, to ask of any question. Is there anyone in the audience? Let's go to any discussion, council. There's no changes made in the, other than those clarifying items from the workshop. Okay, the public hearing. 7:21, open this up to public hearing for anyone who would have comments or questions on our 2022-2023 proposed budget. Is there anybody online, Stephen?
No, sir, there's not.
All right, given there's no one online with question, there is no one in the chambers with question. And I'll close this public hearing again at 7:21 p.m. There is no action item with this, so we'll just move on to 7B. 7B is discuss, consider, and act on ordinance amending the Haslet City Code as amended to enact Article 8.11, hunting by prohibiting hunting on city-owned property marked by signage prohibiting said conduct and authorizing the mayor to erect signage prohibiting hunting at certain city-owned property located adjacent to Schoolhouse Road. Council, this is more specifically towards the 77 acres that the city owns for public facilities. And yes, there's been hunting out there. We do not have a lease agreement. Therefore, we have not authorized any hunting of any sort. And we do not want the liability of a hunting accident. So this ordinance gives us, it already has been posted. We have that ability to post it, but with the passage of this ordinance, we can enforce it. So that's what I'm asking for tonight, is the passage of this ordinance, that we can enforce that. Should you have any questions for Mr. Page with regard to this? He drafted the ordinance for us.
I've got a question. If there's a violation, is this a city that enforces this, or would you call the game board to enforce it?
No, it's the city.
Yeah, so this is considered an ordinance violation specific to if they're hunting on this property. So they would be handled at the municipal court, and they'd be subject to just up to a $500 fine. Now, if they were to violate any sort of state law on wildlife or hunting or anything like that, that would be something that would be subject to the enforcement from the state. But this is just specific to hunting of any sort essentially on this on this specific piece of property.
Our code enforcement or whomever should happen across this, they're not checking their hunting license. Now, the game warden has access any time to come out where they see hunting or fishing as to check your license. But this is not that.
In addition to the signs, you can also, it's understood if you paint a post with a purple on it, that means that you're not supposed to hunt there. And that's supposed to be universally understood by hunters.
Well, I'm hoping everybody can read, because there's, it says
think it was-
no hunting.
It was made for that purpose, so someone that claims they can't read, now they know that this is also a no hunting
A purple post?
It's just color indicating that you're not supposed to hunt there.
All right, Mr. Rogers, if you'd make note of that.
That's what I was gonna ask. Do we need to include a no trespassing?
So that we are allowed to post no trespassing on any of our property if we want to close it for public use. And so I wasn't sure when drafting this ordinance, maybe this property at some point will be open to the public. And so at this point in time, this ordinance simply will allow us to say no hunting. But if at any point we want to say no trespassing on this property as well, the city is well within its right to do so. And I don't think we would even need to pass a new ordinance for that. So.
Right, well, that would be a bad idea. Now, it's not particularly fit for public use out there right now, and it's a big field. And the only people who do have right out there are the oil and gas operators. They have right of way through there. But anyway, getting back to the subject at hand is this no hunting ordinance. So any discussion about that?
I had a question. I was curious why it was just this land. Wouldn't it be could it be anything that is owned a city property in city limits that would apply to no hunting?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Instead of just this one specific tract of land, could it be any city-owned property fit in this ordinance of no hunting?
Jeremy.
Yeah. So how we drafted the ordinance, there's really two parts to it. So we're revising our code of ordinances to prohibit hunting on any city-owned property where we place a sign. So if in the future we wanted to place a no hunting sign on additional city-owned property, we can do so without any further revision to our code of ordinances. Part 2 of this ordinance specifically permits the mayor to place those signs on that piece of property. And so we could, in the future, again, pass similar ordinances that would allow the mayor to place it on additional property, again, without having to revise our code of ordinances. So that is a possibility for the future if there's other properties. But for now, it's not a blanket prohibition. It's just on individual properties where that signage has been placed.
I also believe you have to have at least 10 acres of continuous land for you to hunt.
Correct. So that would, again, that would be a state violation if they were on a piece of property that was less than 10 acres and they were hunting. But again, because this property is 77 contiguous acres, there's not a house within a certain distance. You could be a certain distance from a roadway. There could be possibly some confusion as to whether hunting is allowed on this property. I personally, I would not go onto any other property and assume I could hunt, but others may differ. And so this way we have a specific enforcement mechanism and sign specifically saying no hunting.
Mayor Hulsey, one other question. I know in some places, and again, I came up from a rural place, Wyoming. If it's in the city itself, there's usually no hunting. Is there, if it's city is there?
So there is state law that allows cities to prohibit the discharge of firearms within certain parts of the city, and Haslet has that regulation. And so there are certain parts, though, thanks to state law, if it's been annexed after 1988 or something along those lines, we can't prohibit the discharge of firearms. And so it's possible that this property, they could be issued citation for discharge of firearms if they're hunting with a firearm, plus a no hunting violation. But there is actually no state law that has a blanket prohibition on hunting within city limits. So that would be something that we would have to do on our own.
Thank
Yeah, Mayor, that's kind of along these lines on specific to this property. That's, my, just thinking down the road, if the city acquires any additional lands, do we then have to pass an ordinance for additional ordinances for this?
No, we just simply set out a no hunting sign.
Okay, but this particular ordinance specifically states it's 77 acres of land.
It's written in two parts. One gives us the capability of post no hunting on any city-owned property. The second piece is addressing this acreage specifically.
Right.
So it's a two-part. If you want to go ahead and explain that again, such as if let's say we bought 30 acres somewhere else out in Haslet within the city limits, not even close to this. We could go post it, and this one ordinance would be in effect to enforce it.
Yeah, that's what I want to make sure of, is that
Yes, so our code of ordinances will state that any city-owned property with signage placed by the mayor or his designee will prohibit hunting. If there's signage saying no hunting, then you cannot hunt on that property. The code of ordinances will not specifically state that these 77 acres or any other property within the city is prohibited hunting. Instead, we're simply pointing to whether there's a sign there placed by the mayor. And so, yes, this ordinance specifically calls out that portion of it. In the future, that may not be necessary. It may be maybe good practice, just again to show if we're ever having enforcement issues, to show that this sign was lawfully placed at the direction of the council by the mayor. But again, the way that the ordinance, the code of ordinance update is being drafted is so that we have that flexibility in the future, so that the mayor could possibly place it out there as needed, place additional signage as needed.
Yeah. Okay. And under, a little concerned on section 2 on item B, where it says it's unlawful for a person other than a city employee or city authorized agent to hunt, shoot, potentially injure, kill wild bird, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I read that and I say, are we just opening this up? So did we just spend X millions of dollars to buy a personal hunting lease for city employees?
No, we didn't.
I
No
think
one-
that should be redacted.
No one will be able to hunt on that property unless they get permission from the city council. Nobody.
But the way this reads is a city employee can.
Now, if there were we could, what item is that? Will you pull up that ordinance? I see it right there. Okay, it's unlawful for a person or other than a city employee or other city authorized agent to hunt, shoot, intentionally injure, or kill any wild bird. So let's make a modification right now, Jeremy.
Yeah.
All right. How about it is unlawful for any person to hunt, shoot, intentionally injure, or kill any wild bird animal. So we'll take out that between the commas, other than a city employee or other city authorized agent.
And that would be on both subsection A and B.
I would also, the last sentence of B states, nothing in this provision is intended to prohibit the destruction of poisonous snakes, but our ordinance within smaller properties gives us the ability, the limitation on discharging firearms, gives us the ability to discharge a firearm for destruction of poisonous snakes and what's the term they use for animals?
Yeah.
Rabid animals of that nature. I would add that in here.
Yeah.
Not just poisonous snakes.
Yeah. I think item C, I'm okay with item C. I think that covers what you're alluding to.
Shooting an animal was shot in a vicious animal which posed an immediate. Okay, then item C covers that aspect. So if we would just delete other than a city employee or other city authorized agent from B and keep C, we are covered on both ends.
Mayor Hulsey, I do have a question on A also, and that's on the aspect of trapping. I do agree with the steel-jawed leg traps being pulled, but live traps, I think many people actually use live traps to actually capture animals to be able to move them someplace else. Does that mean that you wouldn't be able to do that? You'd have to have some other wildlife agency come in? I know in Keller they allow it.
Live trapping?
Live trapping, so if you had a raccoon or something like that, you could trap the raccoon and you could move it to a different place.
Maybe we could add something in there except for authorized agencies such as wildlife management or something of that nature, or...
Well, again, I know that I've been allowed, a homeowner could actually trap something and actually take it to, a creek.
I don't believe our ordinances disallow that.
Well, this one that says live trap, it says you can't with
Okay.
this here.
But again, this is just on this one piece of property owned by the city. So I would
Oh, is
imagine
that-
the only
okay.
people who should be on that property capturing animals are city employees authorized by the.
Okay,
No.
I was just looking the way we talked beforehand, that this is a two-part thing,
Yes.
that we're also looking at city plus also.
This is the only property that we can restrict hunting on per this ordinance is any property owned by the city. So it won't ever be non-city owned property unless we were to make further amendments to this.
So the only people out there that would be permitted to live trap, this covers it, A covers it, an authorized person. So that would prohibit from, someone just happening by decides they want to set live traps. Well, very good question, very good question. So I would think that with in A, the striking of other than a city employer or city authorized agent. No, wait a minute. That is in B. B only is to strike other than a city employee or city authorized agent.
I think it's an A also. You were correct. It's an A as well.
Well, A gives them the city employee or authorized agent to set, trigger, activate, or otherwise use or cause to be set. It's to trap.
Right, the trap only. Got it. No,
Yes.
you're right. Okay, so just B.
Council, good. Any other questions?
I have a question. Since we don't have a code enforcement person now, who's going to enforce this if, let's say, you find someone else hunting out there now?
The mayor, David Rogers, any city employee. And we are, maybe next week, we'll have that code enforcement officer. So we got a ordinance and someone to enforce it. Someone dedicated. But any city employee could make a call and probably call the Tarrant County Sheriff on them as well. So they would, and the Tarrant County
I
Sheriff.
would state that if you always,
Pardon?
I would state that if any employee would want to do that, probably bring in a sheriff with them, because one thing we have saying is anybody that is in game warden or officials, the reason they carry is because the person always on the other end has a weapon or a
Well, I think the people that have been out there, which I have visited with already, they're sitting doves. Nonetheless. So, but a good point, and I don't think anybody would. Is there any further discussion on this? If not, I would certainly entertain a motion, and don't forget that revision to item B.
Mayor Hulsey.
Yes.
I move to approve the ordinance amending the Haslet City Code as amended with the revision of item B to remove the between the commas of the city employee or other Haslet City. They took it off the screen.
Motion's been made to approve the ordinance with the revisions just stated.
That stated that other than a city employee or other city authorized agent is removed from section 8.11.001, subparagraph B.
Subparagraph B.
I'll second that.
There is a second. Very good. Any further discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Motion carries. 7C, discuss, consider, and act regarding the approval of the Haslet Capital Improvements Advisory Committee recommendation concerning the water and sewer impact fee biannual report. Mr. Anderson.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Mike Anderson, Belchef and Associates. We act as the city engineer for the city of Haslet. I'm here this evening to give a brief presentation, walk you through this recommendation letter that you see before you from Chairman Kadesh of the CIAC, and answer any questions you might have about our role, the CIAC's recommendation, or a path forward regarding the recommendations contained herein. So as a briefer, just to be quick with everyone, the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee is basically your Planning and Zoning Commission, plus a member of the ETJ, and their role is to biannually review the collection and implementation of the 10-year water and sewer capital improvement plan that has been developed as part of your impact fee program. And so what we've discovered through the collection of the impact fees and our analysis of the assumptions that were used to generate the capital improvements as part of the last water and sewer master plan updates for the city is that there is some land use assumptions and some basically some discrepancies between your code of ordinances as they relate to fire protection and the needs of the system. Basically, what we have are some land use assumptions that were used to determine water and sewer project, and those assumptions weren't necessarily jiving, if you will, with your current zoning. And so what we've begun is a process of updating the city's comprehensive plan to include updated land use assumptions, which will in turn be used to move forward with a updated water and sewer master plan. So the reason that is important, if you'll go to page, she got there, Stephen, the last page of the recommendations or supporting documents, see a list of projects. There it is, highlighted in yellow. There we are. You'll see a list of projects that were used to calculate the impact fee, totaling roughly $25 million for water and roughly $13 million for sewer. These assumptions, the assumptions that were contained in the actual reports that generated these projects are inconsistent with the city's existing zoning. And so part of that update will be used to determine some of these projects. You'll see, for instance, a 24-inch water line. Well, that 24-inch water line may need to be a 12 or a 16-inch water line, depending on certain assumptions that are fed into the model. Those models take into account ultimate population, which again is a factor of land use, as well as fire flow and other design parameters. And so our role in the last year, since we've been brought back on board with the city, we've gone through the plans, we've gone through the assumptions, and we're making a recommendation to you this evening that we move forward with an update of the water and the sewer master plan that's consistent with the city's updated comprehensive plan. I believe the process has begun formally to update the comprehensive plan for presentation and consideration by you all moving forward here directly. And so the recommendation from the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee is that any funds that are collected moving forward until such time as that formal review and update of the land use plan and the water sewer master plan and impact fee study, any funds collected between now and then be used to fund projects that are highlighted in yellow, and that we continue moving forward with the design of these projects, and that we halt any construction of new projects or projects on this list until such time as those can be evaluated. So you'll note in our estimated completion column for all the projects on here that are not highlighted, they say on hold. reevaluate. You have to go back and determine, is the ultimate population going to be 8,000 people? Is it going to be 10,000 people? Or is it going to be 16,000 people? It's currently stated in the city's water and sewer master plan. Makes a big difference on the pipe size, makes a big difference on these projects, et cetera. So that's in a brief nutshell, that's our recommendation that was presented at length to the CIAC on their meeting on August the 30th. So my goal here this evening was just to provide you with a high-level Cliff Notes version of the recommendation and the results of that meeting, and then kind of walk you through if you have questions on a path forward, coming back with an updated plan, updated calculated impact fee, et cetera. It's a lot in a short time frame. I didn't want to spend 45 minutes. Told everybody I'd try to keep 5 minutes. So
I think I do 7 minutes, but no, I'm
Okay,
kidding.
guys,
I have a
that much
question.
time.
Like,
Yes,
my
ma'am.
only question is, this is a living document, though. If something pops up and we realize this has to be done, it goes from the on hold, reevaluate to we're acting on it, or is this tie us into, nope, we're only doing 2 through 6, you know? That's my question.
No, these are all projects that there is a definite need for pretty much every one of these projects. That I think the question at this point is, what is the line size? What is the terminus of that? This is a living document. This isn't you have to get these done. These were the projects that were captured as a part of the study based on assumptions that were made available and vetted by those making the decisions at the time, right? So just like anything else, the decisions that were made are only good when you make them, right? You make that document, you move on, you move forward. So this doesn't lock you in. This doesn't mean that some of these projects could drop off or that we may add new projects. This is just a rough outline of what was in place at the time. I have a feeling that there's going to be several of these drop off, but I do believe there will be some other projects that come to the forefront. Now, I want to point out that the projects that are highlighted at this point are projects that we are either contractually obligated to perform through our agreements with Fort Worth or TRA. The situation with the South FM 156 pump station, we know there needs to be a pump station there. We know that we need to take that project and get that project moving because of the amount of time it takes to design, permit, and construct that facility. And so as we go through and we figure out whether it's a 600,000 gallon tank or a 1 million gallon tank or 3 or 4 pumps, we still need to keep the project moving. It's recommended that before we actually start spending the monies to construct those, we have time to go through and evaluate them.
I will just add a little background. This list, I think, was originally presented back in 2017. But because of the assumptions that were made back in 2017, which all comes from the future land use plan, is what drove the size of these. And this is reflective of a population of Haslet being about 16,000 people. And so what we do anticipate is a lot of these line sizes will be coming down, if anything. Absolutely no promises. Our engineering has to go through and vet all of this and confirm everything. But that's what's anticipated. And this is to even get us to this point now. Now, what they have highlighted in yellow has been confirmed. They are quite confident on this stuff. But this is, over the last year, this has really been a focus, trying to get a handle on this. And I feel good about their work. And nonetheless, Council, back to you. This is yours. Your time.
And I'd just like to point out, we did make recommendations for the water and sewer impact fee, as well as the master plans to be updated this budget year. So we have plans to begin that work in earnest, and it's a process. I mean, there are multiple meetings at all different levels, and so it will take about a year to get through that process, and that's our goal, is to try to get that going.
And just to
ASAP.
close the loop on this meeting, is going back to the very first, reviewing the budget. all of what he just mentioned are line items budgeted for that.
So Mayor, I've got a question on this. So this obviously is still in review. We've got a lot of on hold, reevaluate these projects. Do you have a timeline? You may have mentioned it during your presentation, and I'm sorry if I missed it, on when there'll be more details on the reevaluation, and should this be brought back to us, rather than another 6 months and a shorter interim?
I can try to answer that. One of the Mayor Hulsey alluded to some of the work that we've tried to undertake over the last year. We did develop a 10-year projection of these projects: water, sewer, drainage, streets, and facilities. What we're trying to do now is figure out how to align those with funding and financing options, if you will. Each of the projects that we know we're going to begin in earnest this budget year, we have generally we have schedules produced for almost every single one of those that I'm aware of. And so what we could probably do sooner than later is bundle all those up and provide an overview to everyone. Be nice. We've got most of these on an exhibit. I mean, if we had an overall exhibit, we had copies of the cost estimates and schedules, we could pass those out and give a briefer on those. Now that the CIAC is required under 395 to meet biannually, review the assumptions, et cetera. But we expect as we go through and we figure out more of, let's just take the TRA metering station. Well, that's tied to a much larger regional sewer line that is supposedly going to be under construction next summer. But we've yet to receive that in writing from those folks. And so until we do that, we don't know exactly what our schedule should look like. So we're in the process of going through and trying to evaluate those. So you will definitely see more information before 6 months from now or for a year. If that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Hulsey. I guess one question that I do have is you did bring up that these, the last it was visited is 2017, but I think, remind me, didn't you say that we've already updated the cost estimates to more current dollars? I thought we discussed that in the budget meetings, but I guess if this hasn't been touched in 5 years, are those how off are those estimates going to be?
Those items we have in the budget specifically have been. That's not all of these items.
So during this process, we'll be updating the cost estimates to more reflect what potentially where we're going
As
to
they
be.
go through and verify these, they will put these in today's dollars.
That's correct. The water master plan, which accounts for the bulk of the projects, those up top, that was developed back in 17, 18, and those were the costs assigned to those projects at that time. You're correct. If I remember correctly from that report, they did project those dollars out, and they accounted for interest and et cetera. But when we were tasked with setting up the budget and setting up the actual 10-year CIP that we're working off of, we did take into account current costs. So those were done. When we complete the update, it will be reflective of 2023 pricing.
I got a question.
Yes.
You mentioned population, so the assumptions made in 2017 or whatever they were made, was this based on the residents that we were budgeting to be built? And now it's increased, or the majority, I'm assuming, is because of all the new residents. Is that correct?
Both reports reference the 2016 comprehensive plan that the city had approved. And that basically set the ultimate population somewhere around 16,000 people. And so as you read both those reports, they work themselves back to, these are the land use assumptions that were provided to us that came out of the city's 2016 comprehensive plan. And so at that time, the plan was when Haslet is all grown up and there's no more land left to be developed, there will be about 16,000 residents here. So what we've been in the process of doing is we've taken a look at, okay, how do these land use assumptions that formulate the basis for these reports, how do they compare with the city's existing zoning and things that have been approved? So, when we came on board about a year ago, there were about 2,000 lots that have been approved, and they're in various stages of construction right now. And you're all familiar with watercress and sweetgrass and Latera, et cetera, et cetera. So what the mayor's done is he's worked in concert with us behind the scenes to try to get the builder's takedown schedule and account for their projection and their build outs in order to set the timing for some of these improvements. So you don't necessarily need them until that basin is built out. So while he was working on that, we were going back through and we noticed that there were some discrepancies between some of the currently zoned properties with those that were proposed to be a different type of use, a much higher intense use as part of the city's comprehensive plan. We're going back right now and rectifying those, and we're going to be presenting some changes. And based on what we're seeing, we feel like the ultimate population will be less than 16,000. So as we go through and formulate that and run the numbers and run the modeling, we should be able to bring some of those pipe sizes down and thus eliminate or reduce costs on some of these projects. That answer your question? That's kind of a long way to go about it, but
Somewhat, I'm still a little confused. I mean, if it goes by population, but we're anticipating it to be less,
yes, sir.
so this is just reallocating it to different projects, is that correct? Because my thought was, okay, we didn't anticipate this many residents, so it's gonna go into these, to supply these residents, because it's based on population.
Correct. There's also the fire flow component. So if the system is set up to design, or if the system is projected to flow 6,000 gallons per minute, and we know that the system is only needing to provide 2,000 gallons a minute, that makes a big difference on the pumps and the pipes and everything else. So the population is one component, but when you design a system, especially a smaller system like this, you design it for a maximum day demand plus a fire flow on top of that. And typically your fire flow is the major driver of the pipe size in a small system. This isn't like in Flower Mound or Fort Worth or Frisco. You'll have a 48-inch water line. Well, that 2,000 gallon a minute fire flow is insignificant, but they're trying to move water to a subdivision that has 100,000 people. So the population projections and the ultimate based on the land use assumptions of what does the city want this property to look like when it's developed. That's one component, and then on the water side, the fire flow is another component stacked on top of it.
I just had a question, or I really want a clarification about the timeline of the reevaluation. I think you mentioned possibly a year. Did you say that a while ago?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, a year, but now you're going to give us an update periodically from now to the year to see where we are in the reevaluation?
Yes, ma'am. There will be the need for multiple meetings and or hearings as we go through and work with you all to update the land use assumptions. And then once we have those, that kind of sets the one of the components for our modeling and the updates to the project. And so as we work through that, we'll find some appropriate times to bring you back an update, share with you where we're at. Process.
But we're looking at about a year to complete the whole process.
Yes, ma'am. Just given the number of required meetings, just the amount of work that has to be done. Yes, about a year.
Thank you.
I do want to make mention is that the meetings that Mr. Anderson is speaking of, the additional information coming, is aside from the CIAC reports. These are statutory required reports once every 6 months, what you're looking at right now. And what he's speaking of is like real-time information as we gather more knowledge and they define systems. Eventually, they'll make themselves here on this list. Eventually.
Also, some could possibly drop off, correct? Based on the zoning.
That's
and
correct.
The new comprehensive plan.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Mayor, I've got just a question on the water and sewer impact fees. And just curious if this goes back to the original agreement with Laterra, but I noticed their impact fees are 75% less than all the other additions.
This data goes into to calculate our impact fees, but those rebates to Laterra were by a separate agreement altogether. The impact fees that are calculated are citywide. No particular subdivision in mind. That was just what you're speaking of was a very specific development agreement that was unique to them.
Okay, thank you.
The council, if you know, if please, if you have more questions, please present them to Mike and or David Rogers. He is very knowledgeable of all this entire process. I mean, these guys are linked. I mean, they're attached at the hip on this thing. So either one. But if you have no more questions or discussion, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor Hulsey,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to pass the approval of the Haslet Capital Improvements Advisory Committee recommendation concerning the water and sewer impact fee biannual report.
Very good. Motion is made to accept the Haslet Capital Improvements Advisory Committee recommendation concerning the water and sewer impact fee biannual report. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
There is a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7D, discuss, consider, and act on board, commission, and corporations membership. I was presented a question by a member of the council. What are the bases by which we set our board memberships of regular members as well as membership for alternates? And that's a good question. So I had two bodies of information, one being the local government code and then our ordinances. Then I proceeded to do present a table comparing the two, signing ordinance numbers or local government code chapters and sections, and go through a citation of each board that we have that the local government code references. And that's what's before you. What I did find is the park board and the library board are not mentioned in the local government code. You, as a council, you have full leeway. That's how you define those memberships, both in regular members and alternate members. On the regular members, I did a two-part analysis, or I'll say survey of the document, not analysis per se, is that the regular members, the local government code for each board addressed, board, commissioner, corporation being the Economic Development Corporations, EDC A and B, is that the local government code was explicit in two terms. One, it says you shall have X number of members, or you shall have a minimum of X number of members. That was for regular members. Also, it cites terms and things of that nature. Same thing was done for alternate members. In two boards, I found that it stated that it defined the regular members, and then it stated alternate members could be appointed. And that was in the construction, what is that title? We don't have that board here. And
Buildings and Standards Commission.
yes, facility and standards. That we don't have that board here, but that one board in the local government code cited alternate members. The other board was the Board of Adjustment, our ZBA, Zoning Board of Adjustments. is stipulated here as a membership, and you could have alternates. But there's a third option, which Haslet adopted, and that is to have the city council act as the Board of Adjustments. Therefore, there are no alternates in that situation. The other boards that the code does reference was silent on alternate members. It just stipulated, here's your membership, your regular members, their membership, or minimum number of members that you'll have. Now, there is, it is opinion, legal opinions out there, that there is, the term is, what's that term again? I'm sorry.
The implied powers.
Implied powers. Implied powers, and there's an AG opinion out there that address implied powers, is that a type A general law, now hence general law, that's part of we are a general law type A general law municipality. That's because we are required to follow the general law of the state statute. And I'm giving some of this just for audience background as well. I know you council folks are pretty well tuned up on that. But is that the implied powers addressed by this AG opinion, and I have a copy for each of you, and y'all can start passing them around. You'll need to put 3 down on that end. And Ms. Montgomery, would you come and get 2 of them? Give one to Mr. Page. 2 on that end.
I already have one.
You have
I brought
one
with me.
You have your own copy?
I did, yes.
Well, it's Mr. Jeremy Page that provided this to me anyway. It's on the second page, and then in the middle paragraph, it talks about the implied powers, and these implied powers, or powers that would be, they're not explicitly called out in the local government code, and Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are powers that would be indispensable, as the AG states, to accomplish the cited powers from the local government code. So how does that transfer to this? Is that this study is that such as where we have the local government code is silent on alternate members, should the council decide alternate members following this AG opinion, is there be established a reason why you need those alternate members. And then also, consistent with the local government code, is to establish when an alternate member may sit as a regular member in a meeting. Such as an example, an alternate member could be, well, we want to make sure there's always a quorum. All right, therefore we'll have alternate members. They're on standby in case the regular members don't show up, and therefore we can ensure we always have a quorum for that board. And that also stipulates when that member sits as a regular member. So if you had a quorum already of regular members, and maybe 1 or 2 of the regular members didn't show, that's not called for an alternate member to sit as a regular member, because they have a quorum on their own. But that's just an example. Mr. Page could give you some more probably. There is no case law on this.
That is correct. So, I mean, the mayor did a pretty good job explaining everything that's going on here. So, the city has alternate members on many of its boards, and the local government code doesn't say that we can do it. It doesn't say that we cannot. there's certainly an argument that this having alternate members is part of those quote unquote implied powers that the cities are authorized to do. However, that all being said, it's really the choice is up to you guys, though, regardless of the legality and all that stuff, whether or not you all want alternate members on these boards. And so at this point in time, if you are, we could certainly revise the ordinances to remove the alternate members, or to revise in a way like the mayor just mentioned, where they only serve if a quorum is needed. Right now, they serve mostly if someone is absent. And so let's say there's 7 members, you need a quorum of 4. Well, if 5 people show up, you're still having those 2 alternates serve, even though a quorum is already being there. And so that's an option. Obviously, when you go to appoint new members on these boards, you can choose not to appoint alternate members. You can remove members. Every single member of these boards and commissions serve at your pleasure. And so they are always, that is always an option for that.
Mayor Hulsey, just quick question. And it just made me think on this. Was the because of the we had alternate members was because we didn't have the technology we had beforehand?
I have researched. There is no reason why the alternate members were established. We've looked, and we cannot find why they were established.
One thing that went through my mind was the aspect of didn't have the technology or the virtual meetings like we have nowadays, and so there's more aspect of having potentially alternate members. So I had 2 parts on that. As one is, was it because of that, or now because we have technology we may not need them, or 2, I just completely lost my train of thought. But with the technologies that we have nowadays and stuff, we don't have to have, especially what you're talking about with we don't have the quorum necessary. The technology now allows us to have people to attend some of those meetings outside also, correct?
Well, all of these boards that we have to be compliant with the Texas Open Meeting Act, every one of them. That requires that the quorum be sitting in these chambers. So technology doesn't help with regard to that. They have to be present in the chambers. And now additional members, once you have that quorum, additional members can join the meeting and vote as long as we can see them and hear them. But the quorum only counts in the chambers.
So
Technology, therefore, would not assist in that matter.
I remember my second part then too. Do we have any instances of where we've had to invoke? How many instances over the last year have we had to invoke the alternate member?
Well, that's been one of the things we never have, to my knowledge, that the practice has been. In fact, I'll say that the staff do a very good job, and you're witness of it, as you can attest. You know, are you going to be here? Are you going to be here? Are you going to be here? It's for that reason, to assure that the quorum is present. And so we have not ran into that issue. I think maybe once. Shannon, please go ahead and tell us about that one.
We have, on the Parks Board, they did have to cancel one meeting in the past year because they could not meet a quorum. But currently they do have a couple of vacancies on the board, so that, and even if you have vacancies, you still have to meet the minimum requirements for your quorum of how many board members you have. So that could be a possibility, not regarding alternates, just the vacancy.
So in that case, even with the alternates, we still weren't able to make a quorum. So in neither case, was that a, please go ahead.
Well, I had a question for Councilmember Ricketts. Is that what you're asking, how many meetings had to be canceled because of people, or how many times do the alternates fill in when there's an absence?
That's what I was asking, was how many times we had to invoke it because of it and an alternate. And based upon what we'd heard, do we need to have those alternates? That's what I'm going through.
I mean, I can speak because I was an alternate on P&Z, and I came anyway, whether there was enough people there or anybody was absent or not. But then when someone was absent, I was able to vote, but I just sat and listened, and I believe I could discuss.
Yeah, so the ordinance are written so that the alternates can attend even when there's no absences, can even discuss any of the items prior to a motion being made. And of course, they just cannot make any discussions after that motion is made, nor can they vote on it.
Okay, and I just remember in my couple years, there was pretty much always somebody absent, so I was able to participate as an alternate.
So let me, since you had that, you're the one person that has that direct experience, is being consistent here where we were, okay, let's say there are alternates, but the reason there are alternates is to ensure a quorum is made. From what I'm hearing, it was what the rules you are under are very much what they have now. It's just even though there's a quorum, you participate.
Right, and that's exactly correct. And I would be concerned if I only came if a quorum needed to be met. It would be my due diligence, I guess, to come and sit in the audience or listen online and make sure I'm up to date and caught up with the preparations of the
Sure.
commission or the board.
No, and this is, yes, I would think, hope, those folks that sign up to be regular members or alternate members are attending the meetings to stay current, because it's like you don't know when you're going to be called on to make a decision.
No, Mayor, along these discussion points, because like Councilmember Morrow, I started out on planning and zoning as an alternate. And what I found was it did get you engaged with procedures going on, happenings going on in the city. Then when we did have vacancies, I was appointed a regular member of P&Z at the time. My belief is we struggle in this town as it is to get volunteers to serve on board. Park Department, prime example. I mean, in my feeling, if we can get people, even if it's alternate positions, to be engaged, maybe that allows more education of the community on what's going on in the community and gets them engaged. And if you do have an opening, we've mentioned legally you don't have to move the alternate to a permanent position, but it's an alternative idea. I guess it's another spot you can look at to say, do we go get a new person out of the community or move up an alternate? But it's somebody at least that's been educated and knows what's going on.
So, with that, what you're just describing there, was it either of your experiences that someone would volunteer to be an alternate, but they wouldn't volunteer to be a full member?
We had a full P&Z at the time. We had an opening as an alternate. And so one of the full-time P&Z persons asked me to become an alternate position.
Right, but I'm just.
I'm trying to think back. I might have started as an alternate on Parks Board too, and to me the goal is you start as an alternate if that's what's available, and then once a permanent place becomes available, you kind of move into that. If that's your pleasure, that's what you'd like to do. But I'm trying to think. Most people go into a permanent spot, but some like to stay as an alternate. I would personally like to know, here's my set schedule and here's where my meetings are, not just on call, like if I'm going to have to show up or not. That's just my personal opinion. But I would think, yes, I think most get on the boards with the hope to maybe get a permanent spot if they're an alternate.
So what I'm kind of hearing that y'all think is kind of a training ground, but not necessarily to be on a board that you got to start out as an alternate. That's just an option.
That's a good way to say it.
And I think one of the things that we could look at and you look back over is, what has been the turnover on a number of our boards. And I think like with P&Z, we had a major turnover in 2018. I think that's when P&Z was rewritten to go from 7 full-time people down to 5 people. I'm pretty intimate about that situation. So I think that's the last time you had any major changes with board members.
That's interesting, and that one board, P and Z, is addressed in this study.
They used to be separate, correct?
In fact, it was in 2019. In fact, I started out in service to the city as a planning commission member back in 97, 96, I think it was, and I served several years and then on the council. But nonetheless, and at that time, I'm going, man, these boards ought to be together. They go hand in hand. And that was one of the first things as mayor I did in 99 was join these two boards together. But here, it's interesting that the zoning, on the zoning board, the local government code acknowledges, here's the board, it says, okay, city, you can create a zoning board. And it stops. It doesn't say how many members, nothing. But then it goes on the planning commission. It tells you how many members. Then it also says, well, if you have, I forget, if you have the planning or which one, if you have this, if you have it's in planning, if you have a zoning commission, you can appoint them, or do I have it backwards? You can appoint them to serve.
I don't recall exactly either, but it allows you to merge the two
To merge
together,
the
like
two.
Haslet has and most other cities have.
And so from that, I go, and you'll see it in here, a little write-up I did, is that our planning and zoning commission is established on the criteria of that one, the planning that's defined of 5 members. That's where it comes from. Because the question to me, what's the basis of our numbers, our 5, of members? So I did my best. I'm not a legal scholar, but I'm almost there. Thank you for smiling, Jeremy.
Mayor Hulsey, I have a question or a comment. I don't see a downside to having these alternate members. I mean, it seems like you guys, both of you, had good experiences with it. Is there any downside to having them?
I don't. You look like you're ready to say something.
Yes, I am. I guess I'm looking at it from a different perspective, going off of what your point you made, that we have a hard time filling these positions. So you've got, 10 alternates here in other positions, and if they weren't serving in those alternate positions, then maybe they would be interested in serving on the other boards, and we would have an easier time to fill those other board positions, and they would not remain empty. And I did serve on the library board as an alternate. I would vote when everybody wasn't there, but that was pretty much it, and saw how things worked. But I think by not having alternate members, then you might be able to fill your regular member positions more adequate. That's my perspective.
Yeah. I don't know that there's a downside. I thought about, well, it's pretty good training ground. If they show up, you got to participate, and you got to read and study. Most of this is crack the book, but nonetheless, is one thought that I had is, okay, if I got to have these alternate members to make sure I got a quorum, because the regular members aren't showing up, and generally it might be the same regular members. And what I need to do is get rid of those regular members and put in people who will be there.
I'm glad you brought that up, because the Parks Board has a very, it says if you miss 3 consecutive meetings without notifying somebody, then you could be removed. And I know that the council has something similar with attendance, but I don't know if any other bylaws have that. I was going to ask that question. It's never been enacted in the Parks Board that I know of. Maybe should have, but I mean, I know there is a recourse on the Parks Board. I don't know about other bylaws.
I know the local government code addresses that. I don't think it's automatic removal. I think there's a fine of $3.
Yeah, Mayor, I think we actually looked at that at one time, that the government body, there are guidelines as to attendance.
As I recall, I think most all of the board ordinances that establish them does address that, but whether that being, the words are there. Whether that actually happens is a whole different deal. And, but that's part of what maybe the education, you know, we're a small city, and it's like our staff. Every person we have is in a critical position because they're the only one we have. And maybe our boards, the regular members, we need to get that message to them. You're important. Yes, thank you for volunteering. Guess what? We all volunteer too. But there is an acceptance of responsibility here, and we rely on you for that. But I see the, you know, I'm just talking about the regular member thing. You know, if it were the same ones over time, well, there needs to be a different decision going on there altogether. And it'd be great. You got some alternates to pull from if they want to step up, play ball. I see the alternate thing also as good training ground if they participate. My one thing that I do see, and I have knowledge of, I know there's been, you know, like, well, do I get to sit up there or do I not? Do I get to sit up there or do I not? That we define, okay, the reason for good government, this implied power, is to ensure there's a quorum. That clarified a lot of questions about when to serve and not serve. That gives them reason and purpose to use this implied power. That'd be my suggestion, is if council decides, you know, I mean, right now you don't need to make any changes. You want to keep alternates. You can look at it, study, but at the minimum that we make that change.
So you're asking, so you're saying that if I'm an alternate, I would only participate if I needed to make a quorum?
Correct. Let's say, you know, despite Ms. Montgomery's and Ms. White's best efforts to call the members, and yes, we'll be here, and only 2 people show up, and there's an alternate member sitting out there. Okay, what's the meeting time? Okay, the chair can make that decision, and it needs to be who makes that decision. And the other boards that the local government code has, it states that the mayor makes that decision. But I would relegate that a minimum to the chair makes that decision. It's not an alternate member that makes the decision or someone else. It's a position. At least that, say the chair says, please come up and serve as regular member so we can have our quorum and continue our meeting.
Mayor, maybe it could be something we look at, you know, once a month during the council meetings, we have staff reports that are presented. And one thing, I'll speak for myself, I don't have very much intimate knowledge on any of the EDC meetings, or P&Z, but perhaps we could see a scorecard on like attendance for just the various board meetings. So that would help us educate, because one of the duties that we are here for is to provide, you know, review of those positions on those boards. And if somebody's not attending, it should be brought to our attention at some point in time.
And that record is kept, and so that's something that can be brought.
Yes, it's kept on every set of minutes, so we would just have to go back and pull those and get those started.
The, of course, next meeting, you'll be appointing different members. I am going to ask you at this meeting, you have different options. Here's what my ask is. At minimum, the minimum is to direct the mayor and staff to review these ordinances. And at a minimum, stipulate when they can serve on the regular membership. And that is to complete a quorum so the meeting can proceed.
Mayor Hulsey. Just out of curiosity, how many, we're looking at these different numbers, but it's gone on the aspect of the alternates. Some boards have alternates, some do not. What open positions are out there that are having a difficult time filling?
Yeah, we've got open positions in various boards. I don't have that right off the top of my head or a list with me right now. Miss Montgomery, you got anything you want to summarize or?
I am keeping track of who reapplied and who has not for the next terms for the next meeting already. And we have vacancies on every single board and commission that we have. Parks has 2 vacancies. One's an alternate and one's the regular. And that's basically the way it is. If there's 2, it's usually a regular member and an alternate member right now. But as of today, if we went and did appointments today, we would not have enough people to make every board with their regular members.
One of the things that we need to do a good job at is that in front of it's on the to-do list is I know that there are boards out there, there are people on there, their term is up, and I have the impression, yes, they still want to serve, but they are required to reapply. And it's like there's a lot of members out there that have not read their own establishing ordinance or their bylaws. And so we need, and that comes from the top down. We push it out as to, okay, guys, I need you to read this stuff, please, and know at least those very fundamentals of what they need to do as a board member or alternate member. That goes to any of the members, and that would do well a good service to all of them.
Mayor Hulsey, I guess I go back to the alternate. When I was an alternate, I wanted to participate, and so if I had to come and sit in the galley and then come up only if there's a quorum needed, I don't know how engaged I would be or continue to be engaged. So I do think it's something we need to look at, and I kind of maybe some more data on how many times it's necessary. But having the alternate be able to participate and discuss, but then not vote if they're full, I think is working well. But I mean, it's been a while since I've been an alternate.
Sure. I mean, all ideas, anything at the. All right, and I had this on here as discuss, consider, and act. If anybody has any proposals to put in the form of a motion, if you have want to go, do anything. The only thing, if y'all did do anything at the very minimum, is to win these people served. And that is to make a quorum. That addresses 2 things. One, it is the reason you're using this implied power, and which is a legitimate reason. And the other is it gives them direction. Here's when you take a seat.
But they wouldn't know until, you would try to let them know as soon as possible, but they might not know if they're going to serve until that day or that time.
Well, I'm assuming that they're going to be here just because the meeting is called. I'm just making that assumption, is that they'll be here.
And they probably would be. I do think it needs to be extremely clear, because when I was on P&Z, it was, do I vote? Do I not vote? Do I talk? Do I not talk? I do think it could be clearer on how they serve as an alternate. I don't know if the quorum is too restrictive. I'm still thinking about that.
Yes, ma'am.
In my experience being here since November, so almost a year, P&Z regular members always made the quorum. The alternates were lackadaisical on attendance. So that was very difficult. But I do agree with you that when they were there, some of them, not just to make a quorum, to be the 5 people, they would add them in, the alternates. And it is difficult So there might have to be an agenda template added for those if we do leave alternates on there, that they discuss that at the beginning of the meeting, if they need alternates and who's at that point.
I want to give you, this is a comment that was given to me. It's by one of our boards, a chairman. And that person said that they wish that the alternates were done away with for a couple reasons. One is alternates never are allowed to go into executive session. Some of these boards do go into executive session, so they'll not be privy to whatever was discussed, but yet, when they're in open session, they can vote on an item. So it's their premise was it's an uninformed vote.
And so an alternate, if someone's absent, can't join executive. I thought they could.
As Jeremy, you got anything to share on that?
That's the first I've heard of that as well. I was writing that down to look into that because I'm not familiar
No,
with that
I'm going to
rule.
say, let's say, I'm not talking about the situation. I'm here as a member of the full board because someone didn't show. Yes, if they had to go into executive, that person would accompany them. But as a regular practice, let's say for the last 9 months, you've always had a full board membership making the quorum. They are the ones that go into executive session, not the alternates. The alternates under that situation don't go. And so I'm talking about previous information that may have been garnered to lead up to this meeting's vote. That was, I just told them I would share it with y'all from that one aspect.
Mayor Hulsey, I want to go back to the Texas Local Government Code and the fact that there are no alternates mentioned in it, even though there might be implied powers. And really, I haven't heard any reason why we have alternates, is maybe for the experience, but then they really can't vote and they don't know if they're going to be here or they're not going to be here. And our boards are really important. They're critical to the decisions that they make. And I really would like the boards to look more like the city council and how the city council acts. And if we have a quorum, we have a quorum. If we're not, we have to reschedule the meeting. But if we don't have the alternates, then that falls in line with the Texas Local Government Code. And it also falls in line how we act as city council members in our meetings. That's my opinion.
Well, you know what? A lot of it I agree with. But I'll say all of it. I can't disagree with any what you have said. I wish all the boards would, the city council, we've not had to postpone a meeting. Now, special meetings we've had to coordinate.
And that's the case with all of our boards and commissions. They all have a set schedule, just like you do. And they know that ahead of time.
So, and I understand the implied power. But I you know what? I'm just going to admit it. Some people they call constitutionalist. I'm a constitutionalist. Here's the rules. Makes my life simple. I follow them. I'm an obedient person. Do that. Gary's going to go do that. And it makes life simple. Now, does that mean you never change from there? No, but you get the basics down, right? And then build upon that. But I can see a benefit. Okay, board, whatever your board is, you don't have any alternates. So regular members, you got a responsibility.
Yeah.
Well, also, when we ask about how we're structured in the city, we can go back to the Texas Local Government Code. And that's how these boards are structured. No one can tell me why we had alternates to begin with. So I just think we need to elevate the boards and the importance of the boards and the commitment of the boards.
I just got some comments. Mayor Halsey, sorry. I see there's pluses and minuses on both sides, but to go one way or the other, I don't know if we can make a decision now. My opinion is if we do away with them, then maybe we do set rules as far as attendance to these board meetings. If these people are not going to show up, maybe these other folks that are on the alternative list would want to move into a full-time position. And then they know they're committed because there's not going to be someone there to replace them. There's not going to be an alternate. If you're not there, we're not going to have a meeting. So I think that'll push them to be more dedicated and show up to the meetings, in my opinion.
So I think one of the things that sounds like I need to do is get each of you a copy of the enabling ordinance for every board we have. And some of them have bylaws on top of it. And it's to read those. So you know what you're reading, what you're changing, and also this study here is real good to guide you through that. This cites the ordinances, and it cites the companion local government code section. And so is to go through. What I have not cited in this report that I did is what the ordinance says. I just merely reflect it in the terms of numbers. But those ordinances are out there. You would have to ask, in fact, we will have Ms. Montgomery go ahead and get those together, and we can have them ready as PDFs to transfer and also make hard copies for you so they're ready for your review. I would ask this. If you do nothing, at least do this. Because you can always go back and change it, but right now is to go, your primary role is to make a quorum. That will solve a number of things out there right now.
What will it solve? I'm just a little confused on why the quorum is so important.
That's your read. I mean, with the enabling powers that you have, that is the reason. You're giving a reason why. Training or something is not necessarily a qualifying reason to have these implied powers when this, particularly this AG opinion, says it's indispensable. The reason is indispensable. The use of that implied power is indispensable to execute the powers that you have been given. So that one, to make a quorum in that situation, unless y'all can think of another reason.
Well, the Texas code, it says it has to have a quorum.
Yeah.
So you want us to state that for the ordinances?
That
Also,
is that the reason for an alternate.
if a quorum is not
That's when they serve.
present.
That's
Okay.
That's the
Okay,
trigger.
that's what you
when
want.
serve.
That's what you want.
Well, I would cite
that's
that
who
as a
vote-
minimum.
Okay, and that's who votes. So for example, I'm on the library board and I'm an alternate. And so there's 7 people, but 6 are only there, but a quorum is 4 out
You
of
don't
6.
serve.
Right. In the past, when I was on the library board, if that 7th person wasn't there, I got the vote. So you would want then, since there's a quorum, then I wouldn't vote as an alternate. Is that correct?
Not if they had a quorum.
Correct. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
As it stands now, I think it is that whoever isn't, even though they might have a quorum, but not all the members are there, then alternates are voting.
And the only reason I'm stating that is your use of implied power. I mean, if I just go down this thing literally, no, you're not getting any alternate because it's not stated that you can do that. But therein lies the implied powers. It opens a different door. But the AG is saying the guidance they're giving, and if I'm stepping over Jeremy, but as I read this AG opinion, it says the statutory grant of authority includes implied powers. You have statutory grant of authority. But they're saying it includes implied powers. But only those that are necessary or as reasonably necessary to affect the powers expressly granted. And then they go, that is to say, such as are indispensable to carry out your granted power. Now, you have a granted power to establish this board. The purpose of this board is to make recommendations to the city council. They got to have a quorum. Now, well, they maybe because it's not a city council, they don't feel that responsibility to make every meeting and things like that. And there are absences, but we need to have their vote, their recommendation. So we, to help solve this problem, let's put out some alternate members in there too, so they can at least make a vote on their recommendation, discuss the item, and give us some recommendations. Well, then we've determined it's indispensable. We need to have these members, alternate members, to ensure that we're going to have a quorum on these other boards. That's what I'm saying. And then with that, if I'm saying the alternate members are there to ensure we're making a quorum, then that in itself says you serve when there's no quorum. You serve to make a quorum.
Okay, based on this opinion then, the implied, our alternates would really not be indispensable because we mostly always have a quorum of the members. Is that correct?
In my experience with the P&Z, I don't go to the other meetings that have alternates.
Mm-hmm.
I can do a report for the last fiscal year of attendance, and I can have that the next meeting for you when we're looking at the appointments.
So the implied powers indispensable wouldn't apply for alternate because they're dispensable.
Well, but she's saying she's not sure yet. She only has the P&Z data. But I see what you're saying. I think that alternates are indispensable, and I'm assuming the declared objects of the municipality are the citizens of Haslet. And as the mayor said, it's a great training ground. We have 3 council members currently sitting up here that were alternates to start. And so I think that it gets our citizens involved in the community. And I would just, and if we were to make that change, I guess I'd want to know how it was going to happen. What would be the protocol? Would it be tenure? Would it be attendance? How would we get rid of the alternates, or how would that be eliminated? And I have one other thing I want to say too. But the type A could easily go into a compliance because it says 5 minimum. So we could change that to 7 regular members instead of 5 and 2, and kind of see how it works with no alternates on a board before we make the big jump for everybody. It's just an option.
Mayor Hulsey, just a real quick question on that though too. And it concerned me with what Shanna had already said, saying that she didn't think that would even get filled the regular board membership without these. Now, question again is, I think if I remember correctly, is when they fill out an application, they usually have three positions that they'd be interested in, but they could say that they're only interested in one.
Right. Currently, our application has 2 choices. We can update to 3, but right now it's 2.
Because I guess my biggest concern was to make sure that those board positions get filled before any alternate positions get filled. And so if you only put down that you're interested in one alternate position or something like that, then that,
I don't think they put down they just put what board they're interested in, not whether it's regular member or alternate member.
Correct.
But if
it's just the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
It's council's decision during the appointment process where they're going to put anybody on the list.
And then you have a second choice.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we're going to the point that it looks like that we're not going to be forming the regular members, I don't see how we could vote for alternate members on a board.
Correct, because we're having a hard time filling the regular
The
members
regular
now.
members.
And if we fill up, say, alternate members on the other boards, when we're missing 2 or 3 on another board, when they could be interested in serving on it and still be involved.
I mean, that's valid. I don't know if I would want, I really liked Parks Board. I would probably do library. P&Z was interesting. I don't know if I go back to that, but it was interesting. So I would think people know what they want to do. I do like when people put 1 and 2 and we can kind of move them around to where we need them. I don't know if the right term, I'm just trying to remember what I used last time, is postpone for consideration, if that's correct, to get more information, more data, because maybe they haven't filled out their applications yet, and they are going to get them in, and we will have full boards. Because right now we have, you said 2 on Parks Board. I think there's 1 on Type B, and is that it? Are there any other
The
vacancies?
deadline to apply for anybody is Friday, so that we can get ready. But right now, we have currently 1 vacancy on Type A, and that's a regular member. Type B, it's a regular member vacancy. Library Board, we have a regular member vacancy and an alternate member vacancy. Parks and Rec Board, the same, 1 regular, 1 alternate. P&Z, 1 regular. And then CIAC, which is the 5 members of the regular P&Z, we have 1 vacancy because we did have a commissioner resign this year.
You know, and so, and this is a good discussion y'all are having, is that, say for a given board, or multiple board, or for any given board here, you got several people, and they sign up for positions, you know, and they go, well, I'll sign up for alternate here, but I'm not being able to fill, I haven't got enough to sign up for regular members. Well, I'm hoping that what you do is, you know what, I know you asked for an alternate, but we'll consider you for a full membership or nothing. Well, I don't know nothing, but I can't see leaving a full member vacant and that you want to be an alternate.
But who wants to be they only become an alternate if they don't become the regular member, and then we move up alternates or put people in those positions. So I don't know if anybody actually applied and says, I want to only be an alternate. But I don't know if you've
I have never seen that in my 20 plus years that somebody would request an alternate position. I think that's just, since the board has those and you're trying to fill it in and you're trying to put somebody there, I think that's the council's decision to.
It would probably be a better idea to then have just a second option instead of an alternate option on the application.
Well, it's first choice or second choice for your boards
Okay,
and
for your
commissions.
board.
We don't have a spot on the current application to select if you want to be an alternate position. We don't have that on there.
I think when I applied, I do think that there was or it could be there was an opening for the alternate one on the library board. And so that was my second option. I don't know if that's on now, the application or not.
I
What's
don't
open?
believe it's ever been on the application. You might have just been appointed to that because it was full and you selected
No,
library board, but I
yeah.
can go back and check for sure.
A couple years ago, I did. I remember that.
Okay, so I can check on that.
Yeah, go ahead and pull up all the applications. So the council has a whole packet of this whole process.
Okay, so if the applications are due by September 9th, then do we need to make a decision on this tonight? Because I don't think we're meeting before, when do we vote on?
The
members?
19th
The
is the
19th.
next meeting, and that's when you would be making your board appointment. So if you needed to think about this, you could postpone this and make your decision
On the
at
19th?
the 19th prior to making your appointment.
I suggest we postpone it and put it on the next agenda after
Well,
we have
wait a
more
minute,
information.
wait a minute. I'm gonna claim I'm the chair
Okay.
and speak to the chair, not to the city secretary. Thank you, though. So is that, I hear things of what you like to do is kind of like the first one comes up with a motion that passes is what we'll do.
Mayor Halsey?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to postpone the consideration to act on board, commission, and corporations membership
Until what time?
until the following meeting or our next meeting.
Next meeting? Okay, motion is made to postpone the consideration of this membership to the next meeting. Is there a second?
Mayor Hulsey, I second.
There is a second. Any further discussion?
Yes. I think that we, within that amendment, if we could ask for the things that we've asked for, to be present for our council members so that we can make that informed.
Are you talking about the, what things we asked for?
One, I think I'd like to see the ordinances.
Okay,
I would like to see the applications. I would like to make sure that we're filling those applications and
I understand. Okay, we're talking about attendance records, the application form itself, all the enabling ordinances for each board, and bylaws if that board has it.
And just as a further discussion item, can we make at the next meeting, can we parse this out, saying, okay, on this one, on this board, I think we only want to go to the 5 members. On this one, we can potentially go to.
That would be part of your discussion item next meeting.
At the next meeting. That's what I thought.
So each of you might have your own plan together.
I'll bring our own. So does that need to be an amendment to my motion or just staff direction?
No, I'll ask, let me in. So, do you agree to that amended motion?
I guess I'll just amend to with information provided.
That's very good. I with the staff, and I can carry that out. So the second, agree? Okay. So I'm just going to, yes.
I'd like to make an amendment to the amendments that there is a quorum that's required for the members on the boards.
Okay, so then we are doing a review of or each providing a modified ordinance for your consideration.
I think you requested before we leave
Yes, I
tonight.
did.
Is that what you were requesting?
Yes. If you did anything at all, because at
That we
next
would-
meeting, you take no action, at least you got enabling ordinances to define when these people,
That requires a quorum.
that requires a quorum. That
So-
accomplishes the enabling or the implied power requirement and when they take a seat.
Would we have to make a motion on the amendment? I don't want to
no.
amend. I don't want to amend my motion to say that. So someone needs a second, Ms. Mayor Pro Tem.
So is there a second to that amendment? Does everybody understand what the amendment is? All right.
If I could have further discussion on that
Please.
beforehand, is the only reason I'm not seconding that amendment is the aspect of we may make the decision that at the next meeting that we're just going to go down to the 5 members and no alternates. That's the reason I don't, until we know that we're going to have alternates, I think we can't make that. amendment.
Understood.
Yeah, and I think it'll be addressed in the next meeting as well, so that's the reason I'm not gonna say.
Okay. All right, I'll repeat it again. Is there a second? There is no second. Amendment failed. All right, we'll go back to the primary motion and its amendment, which is all the supporting materials for each board. All right, there was a second to that. Huh? There was a second to that. And so I'll call for the vote on that original motion and its amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
All any opposed? Okay, motion passes 4 and 1 opposed. Wow, I'll tell you what, that was a good discussion. That was a good discussion. All right. Council, we need to go into executive session. So the time is, it is 8:58. I would like to us recess for, say, 10 minutes, if we could, and meet in the conference room for executive session. So that'll put us back here at 9:08. Oh, yeah, I do. Executive session. City Council reserves the right to adjourn into executive session during the course of the meeting to seek legal advice from its attorney regarding any item on the posted agenda as authorized by Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, specifically Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, pending or contemplated litigation, settlement offer, or to seek advice from the city attorney. Under 1 is development agreement and all matters incident and related thereto, and developer agreement and all matters incident and related thereto. And if we could, it is now 8:59, so if we meet back at 7 or 9:09 in the boardroom. Thank you. Okay, it's 10:22 p.m. We resume the open session of our council meeting, September 6th, 2022. All members of the council are here present in the chambers. Let's go to item 9. Consider and take any action resulting from executive session. There are no items to act on. Number 10 is future agenda items. Council, do you have any future agenda items?
I don't know if it's a future agenda item or just a clarification on the CFA with Sweetgrass that was, I only noticed it because I was looking at the minutes on 8/1. Will there be is that coming back to us soon, or is it still in review?
It is in review and negotiation with the developer. And it could be, the progress is possibly the coming meeting, no later than the meeting after. Any other items? Okay, then let's go to 11. May I have a motion for adjourn?
Mayor Hulsey, I move to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Mayor Hulsey, I second.
There is a second. All in favor? It's unanimous. Motion carries. This motion is adjourned at 10:23 p.m.
This conference is no longer being recorded.